As I know that social media is melting down after today's developments on the quarterback market. Matt Ryan from Atlanta to Indianapolis. Marcus Mariota is now the quarterback for the Falcons, signed to a 2-year deal, and Jameis Winston extended by the New Orleans Saints, which leaves a shrinking amount of musical chairs for Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield, who are on the screen, and that obviously leads to freakouts online. And to be honest, I think these are freakouts that shouldn't be happening, because this is a much more fluid situation with a whole lot more context than people are giving it credit for. That painting right behind me is black and white. Maybe there's a little bit of gray there. Yeah, I could see there's a little bit of gray there. And anyway, the truth of this matter with Jimmy Garoppolo and a potential trade, and how the market may or may not evolve, and what the 49ers may actually plan to do with him and Trey Lance, it's not a black and white issue. And analyzing it in black and white is just going to cause people to yell at each other. It's going to be a reprisal of the discourse surrounding the 2021 offseason, when the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, and then everybody argued for months about whether or not they would keep Jimmy Garoppolo. And some people shouted that, oh, it's impossible to keep Jimmy Garoppolo because they invested so much in Trey Lance. And then other people shouted in the other direction, whereas the truth was somewhere halfway in between, right? The truth was that the 49ers obviously wanted to keep Jimmy Garoppolo, but they also wanted to shepherd Trey Lance along. And that, similar way of thinking has to be translated here into the 2022 offseason. I'm going to illustrate that through this video on this channel. So go ahead and subscribe right now, because there are assumptions that people have made in this situation with Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers potential trade of him that, might be fine assumptions to make, but none of them, and I'm going to list 4 of them here, have been fully verified as this is exactly what the 49ers are doing. And until we get full verification on assumption 1, assumption 2, assumption 3, and assumption 4, which, by the way, we won't get full verification on because it was not grounded in any sort of reality, we just have to admit this. This is my bottom point, that the only concrete fact that we know is that no outsider knows exactly what the 49ers are going to do. So let's get started. Assumption number 1. And I'll tell you what, I entered this offseason with assumption number 1 as well. And it's probably still a safe assumption to make. I'm not saying that these are disproven theories. I'm just saying that they're assumptions and that we need to treat them as such. Assumption number 1 was that Trey Lance will start for the 49ers in 2022. This is an assumption that I made way back when they drafted Trey Lance. I figured Garoppolo starts 21, Lance 2022. I think the 49ers also made that assumption, but they left themselves wiggle room just in case Lance didn't develop quickly enough. All right, let's leave it at that. We'll return to it. Assumption number 2, the 49ers cannot possibly fit Jimmy Garoppolo's $27 million cap hit in 2022. This was also a widely held assumption. It may still have some validity to it, but again, just like the painting behind me, it's in the gray area. It's not in the black and white, because some of the financial realities of the NFL, especially over the past week, with what we've seen in these quarterback deals and how payments are exploding for Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford. And we've seen the 49ers' own restructures. We've seen this propensity to move salary into the future with the exploding salary cap and, league revenues just going through the roof. We've seen the dynamics financially of, they can't possibly fit $27 million onto their books in 2022. We've seen those dynamics change. So that assumption right now is on more tenuous ground than it was before. This is what I talk about, fluid situations. Assumption number 3, Jimmy Garoppolo would command automatic trade value this offseason. I think when Jimmy Garoppolo was assumed to have not needed surgery right after the start of the offseason, this was another very fine assumption to make. But again, it's hard to deal in absolutes in the NFL. And it currently seems, especially according to Diana Rossini's report today, that the Indianapolis Colts saw Garoppolo's inability to participate in OTAs this year as a red flag that might have dissuaded them from trading for him. It definitely seems that we probably shouldn't assume that Garoppolo will command automatic trade value this offseason, and that it may take him healing up and the market to evolve, right? Training camp, we might see somebody get hurt, or even earlier in the offseason, we might see another quarterback get hurt, and the market might evolve to create automatic demand for Garoppolo. But as it stands right now, it's Garoppolo and it's Baker Mayfield waiting for the musical chairs to stop spinning around. And we don't know what that trade value exactly is. In fact, Matt Ryan just went for a third-round pick today. That's not all that high, especially for Matt Ryan. I get it. There's a lot of financial implications at play. The Falcons are eating $40 million here in dead money. So, I mean, that was one where I almost expected Atlanta to get a little bit more in return just to be able to swallow that cap hit. But it goes back to assumption number 2. If cap relief and a draft pick coming to help with cap relief is not as big of a deal as it was in years prior because of that exploding salary cap in the future, perhaps it's time to redraw the assumptions that we made entering this offseason. So as far as Garoppolo automatically commanding something right now, I think that's a supposition that a lot of people made entering this offseason, but I think it's a assumption that probably shouldn't be taken for granted right about now. And assumption number 4 was that the Jimmy Garoppolo 49ers potential trade situation would set itself and remain static. And this is one that is absolutely untrue now and was absolutely untrue before. These situations, no matter how much social media and our black and white way of thinking likes to process facts, this situation was never going to be static. It's a trade market. It's inherently unpredictable. And on top of that, Jimmy Garoppolo obviously underwent the surgery right around the time of the NFL Combine. That lent itself to even greater unpredictability. So this was never going to be static. People who pretended that it was going to be static and are pretending that it still is static right now, they're going out and saying, oh, the 49ers have played themselves. This is a complete failure. It's just inherently untrue about the situation, right? So this is going to continue to evolve. The 49ers will have parameters of how to proceed, but until they're prodded into a certain course of action, we probably shouldn't expect that action to happen. So in summary, none of the 4 assumptions have been verified. And assumption number 4, the Jimmy Garoppolo potential trade situation would remain static, has been flat out, debunked. It's just flat out untrue. I think, in a way, assumptions 1 to 4 stretch and range from very true. Trey Lance will probably start for the 49ers in 2022. You can probably still bank on that, to lessening degrees of truth. And it's funny because they have evolved over time. So the 49ers cannot possibly fit Jimmy Garoppolo's $27 million cap hit in 2022. Not so sure about that. I did a whole video a little bit earlier today explaining the dynamics, and I'll explain them some more as we delve further into it with this one, because a lot of the financial landscape of the NFL has been turned upside down with the shocking news of the past week of all these, the quarterback carousel has been absolutely insane, right? And the money being given to these quarterbacks, to Deshaun Watson, to Stafford, to Aaron Rodgers, has been groundbreaking. And it has shown a change of mentality from NFL teams as far as the salary cap goes and as far as pushing money goes into the future. And it makes total sense when you see projected annual average increases of the salary cap increase from 10 million to potentially 17 million here in a couple of years. It just gives teams a lot more financial flexibility to push money into the future. But Garoppolo's shoulder surgery, among other things, has made this a particularly fluid situation. So yes, Trey Lance will likely start for the 49ers in 2022, but there's no reason for the 49ers to give up the option power of having Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster for free. And it seems that a lot of people want the 49ers to just jettison potential maneuverability for peanuts. If you read Jeff Howe's article, which is up on the screen right next to me, this is on The Athletic. Jeff Howe, he has sources in the league. He has front office sources in the league. So he knows what he's talking about. And you could scroll down to some of the things that Jeff Howe has said in this piece about Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'll read just a couple of the quotes to you just to set the table here and really give some of the ground rules for what's happening. But Jeff Howe writes, the Niners might not be in a rush to move Garoppolo unless they're blown away by an offer. That's because they want to make sure Trey Lance is ready to take over as the starter. Lance will have an opportunity to operate as the de facto starter for 2 months this spring while Garoppolo is hurt. including an important stretch in organized team activities and minicamp. If Lance proves that he's ready, the 49ers will be more apt to pursue a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, so let's unpack all of this, right? Because I think for some people it's shocking because of the assumptions. They assumed, one, Trey Lance will start for the 49ers in 2022, and two, the 49ers can't possibly fit Garoppolo into the salary cap in 2022. So they just felt that this was going to be some kind of black and white quick transition. Anything less hasty than that means that John Lynch and the 49ers are somehow dropping the ball. But as you can tell from what Jeff Howe just wrote, it's a whole lot more complicated than that. So what's going on? Well, at the moment, the 49ers face only one hard deadline, and that comes in week 1 when Garoppolo's $24.2 million 2022 salary becomes guaranteed for the season. Base salary is divided into weeks. There's 17 regular season. A player will get a paycheck that is 1/17 of that salary every week, essentially, as the season goes along. Garoppolo, being a vested veteran, has the benefit of seeing his salary vest into fully guaranteed money come week 1 of the regular season. That's why you see so many teams cut and potentially re-sign some of these vested veterans in week 2, because that way their salary is not guaranteed for the whole year. So if you're with a team in week 1, if you make that initial 53-man roster, that salary is guaranteed for the entire season. That is the real only inflection point at the moment that we know will force the 49ers to do something. They have decided that they can fit Jimmy Garoppolo on the new league year roster. That was last Wednesday. They cleared enough room through restructures for Dee Ford, Eric Armstead, and George Kittle to make it happen. And since they were able to make that happen, the 49ers theoretically can get Jimmy Garoppolo aboard until the next inflection point, which is that 53-man roster when the salary becomes guaranteed. Now, up between now and then, we'll see what might prod the 49ers to diverge from that path. A potential is a team coming in and offering a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. At that point, John Lynch might be like, oh, okay, well, it's not worth it to keep Jimmy Garoppolo aboard. We'll trade him right now. Or maybe that price of 2 second-round picks, which came through Pro Football Talk today. I don't know what the price is, but the 49ers obviously have one. The old adage goes, every man has his price. I'm sure the 49ers front office, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, have their price for Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, it has not been met yet at this point. So what other proddings might occur between now and then? Well, theoretically, Jimmy Garoppolo's camp could come along and say, we want to be released. We want Jimmy to be a free agent. We want him to be able to sign with any other team. If that were to happen, and it's hard to kind of predict what the exact variables that would, be an impetus to that would be. But if that were to happen, there would likely be some kind of negotiation between the 49ers and Garoppolo over his $7.5 million injury guarantee. Right now, Garoppolo obviously can't pass a physical because he just underwent shoulder surgery a couple weeks ago. So if the 49ers released him and no team picked him up, well, the 49ers would be on the hook for $7.5 million no matter what. And if, say, Garoppolo wanted to force his release, if he really thought he could go somewhere else and, didn't want to be under contract with the 49ers any longer, if his contract was not advantageous for him, well, then somehow, some way, he'd have to negotiate with the 49ers about that injury guarantee, because I'm sure that could be a slight thorn in these proceedings. So I could see a prod through that. I could see a more likely prod through a potential trade. And when we talk about the potential trade scenarios right now, obviously that market is not too fruitful for the 49ers, right? You saw Matt Ryan go to the Indianapolis Colts. You see Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo currently waiting. Well, when the market is what it is right now, it's very unlikely to meet the 49ers price, whatever price they do have in mind. Well, the 49ers may see their price satisfied if the market develops further, which can happen with two things and probably a combination of both of them. One is a full return to health for Jimmy Garoppolo, and two is a passage of time to training camp so that another quarterback opening can actually open up, and Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, becomes a more valuable potential asset. So all of these things, actually have to materialize. Stuff actually has to move. And I know that in this black and white age of thinking where stuff has to happen now, zero-sum game, I know that it's not really popular to voice this, but I'm not afraid to go out and explain that these things have far much more gray area than people will give it credit for. And to all those people shouting criticism, emotionally upset that Jimmy Garoppolo is somehow still part of the 49ers right now, I ask you, what should the 49ers have done, or what should they be doing? If they don't have an offer for Jimmy Garoppolo because of the dynamics of play, because of the shoulder surgery, because of the fact that people and potential teams want Jimmy Garoppolo to be on the roster practicing during OTAs, because of the fact that teams don't want to trade for a starting quarterback and introduce him while he's wearing a sling on his throwing arm, if these dynamics actually are at play, which it appears that is the case, what should the 49ers have done? Released him for peanuts? Because it doesn't benefit them. Again, we talk about the salary cap assumption. The 49ers can't possibly afford the $27 million cap hit. This is just an assumption. This is something that's lost a lot of truth and a lot of credibility over the past week, as we've seen Deshaun Watson sign for $230 million guaranteed, as we've studied the salary cap and seen that the 49ers are okay with pushing payments down the road. If you've got money in the future because the league's revenues are spiking, the financial rules of the game are different than before. And it's all come down to this. It's all come down to one thing. The 49ers don't stand to gain much from trading Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, right now. And they also don't stand to lose much from keeping him, with the big asterisk there being for the time being. That's fluid. But at this very moment, if they're not getting trade offers for Jimmy Garoppolo, or if those offers are extremely weak, then they don't stand to gain much from trading him. And if the financial realities are what we've been saying that they are, with these restructures becoming more and more palatable for teams, they also don't stand much from keeping him. So that means at the next deadline, that means you're in purgatory, right? That means the 49ers either have, if you're a glass half full kind of person, that means, or if you're a glass half empty kind of person, 49ers are in purgatory with Jimmy Garoppolo. They're stuck in this holding pattern. They want to land the plane at the airport, but they don't have clearance to do so yet. And it's more beneficial for them to just be circling around for the time being. And they're not going to run out of fuel. They're not going to face an inflection point until Garoppolo's week one salary becomes guaranteed in 2020 in week one of 2022. And that's $24.2 million. So until then, we'll see what might prod the 49ers, but we'll operate and we'll continue to evaluate this with a realization that when you talk about business and you talk about finances and you talk about draft capital and, playing capital right now with Trey Lance and his development, there is not going to be a hard and fast rule. We have to separate facts from emotions in this case. And we have to know that the only concrete fact to deal with at the present moment is that nobody knows exactly what the 49ers will do. We do know what they should do. This is what they should do. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. The 49ers need to improve their offensive line moving forward because it's not currently up to par, minus Laken Tomlinson at right guard, which wasn't good in this past 2021 season, with Alex Mack, entering that age 36 year, and Mike McGlinchey still rehabbing. There's a lot of work for the 49ers to do up front. And whether or not Trey Lance proves himself to make the 49ers extremely comfortable with him over the next few months or not, he still needs a better offensive line in front of him if the 49ers have designs on winning their sixth Super Bowl trophy. So that's something that everybody can agree on, right? The offensive line needs to be better no matter what for the 49ers. And it's something they could probably address here over the course of the next couple months. But there is a non-zero chance that the 49ers won't be able to firmly cross this quarterback bridge until later, just because of the truths that I just outlined. So it's complicated. It took me 20 minutes to explain, but don't let anybody turn a 20-minute story full of gray area into something that's just one tweet long. It just doesn't work that way. That's not the way that actual football works. It might be the way social media works. It might get a lot of clicks. But when you talk about business, especially business like this with evolving factors in both the financial sphere and in the playing capital, draft capital sphere, you have to take time to sit down and explain it. So don't make any assumptions. know that especially assumption number 4 is incorrect. This is not a static situation. Fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the ride. Everybody take care.